And what you would do is pick a person or a couple, drug them.
Yes, that's correct.
Take their passport and any valuables they might have and move on.
That's correct.
How many times do you think you did that?
I did so many times as I've had.
20? 120?
Maybe 100.
From Bangkok to Bombay, Charles Sobridge left a trail of destruction wherever he ventured. The dozen or so murders attributed to Charles weren't the result of an out-of-control bloodlust. His worldview was such that murder was a way of maintaining his transcontinental lifestyle. Boasting both good looks and ineffable charm, Charles would befriend those he encountered on his travels before disposing of them, usually after having drugged them. He would then steal his victims' identities, traveling on their passports, to move from country to country undetected. Charles appears not to have derived particular pleasure from the act of murder. Nor did there seem to be any internal moral conflict around it. To use his earlier words, he had no feelings. Welcome back to True Stories, join the family, and let us explore some of the most interesting true crime case. As always, if you enjoy, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. Now let's get into it. Charles was born to a Vietnamese mother and an Indian Sindhi father in Vietnam. After he and his mother were abandoned by his father, Charles was adopted by his mother's new boyfriend who was a French army lieutenant. He had a tough childhood. And as he turned into a teenager, he began to commit petty crimes. He got his first jail sentence when he was only 19 years old. During his time in prison, Charles used his manipulating skills to get close to a wealthy prison volunteer named Felix Descone. And with time, their bond and friendship grew stronger. In fact, after Charles was granted parole, they became roommates. And it was during this time that Charles used Felix's stature to enter the high society of Paris and to make his way into the criminal underworld. He began committing petty scams and burglaries throughout his early 20s, and it was during that time that he met Chantal Compagnon, the love of his life and his first wife. The couple got married and fled to Mumbai from France during the 1970s. Along the way, they scammed other tourists and traveled through Eastern Europe using fake documents. On more than one occasion he feigned illness in order to be taken to hospital, whether claiming to be suffering from appendicitis or vomiting fake blood. In Kabul, Charles once drugged the guard minding his room and simply walked out of the hospital. Charles developed a capacity to misuse the trust of those close to him. After his most recent jailbreak he fled to Iran, deserting Chantal, who was forced to return to her family in Paris. While he was on the run, Charles met his younger brother André, who became his partner in crime. Though the duo didn't last for long. They were caught in Athens after pulling off scams in Istanbul. However, as luck would have it, Charles managed to escape, but unfortunately, his brother couldn't. His brother had to serve an 18-year jail sentence. While in Thailand, Charles began to gather a following through his charming personality. That's how he met with Maria Leclerc, his girlfriend who was devoted to him. Both of them pulled off scams by pretending to help people out of difficult situations that were actually premeditated by them itself. The entire point of this was to make his victims feel indebted to him for helping out, and it worked. Charles would win his victims' confidence and would strike when they would least expect it. For example, he once gave shelter to a French tourist who was suffering from dysentery, but it was Charles who was the one who poisoned the tourist in the first place. And, over the years, his crimes started to get more serious. In 1975, Charles committed his first murder. Though he wasn't the only one to be blamed for it. He was accompanied by an Indian named Ajay Chowdhury. The victim was Teresa Knowlton from Seattle, and she was found dead in a pool, wearing a bikini. The next victim was a traveler named Vitaly Hakim, whose burnt body was found near the resort where Charles and Leclerc were living. 2 Dutch students followed, their bodies found strangled and, again, burnt. Then came the discovery of the corpse of Charmaine Carew, Hakim's girlfriend, who had traveled to Thailand to investigate his disappearance. Charles and Leclerc then absconded to Nepal, where they met and murdered a pair of North American backpackers and traveled into India before returning to Thailand, all using their victims' passports. By now, a handful of Charles and Leclerc's associates in Thailand suspected them of carrying out the murders and, before fleeing back to France, notified the authorities. Charles Leclerc and Chowdhury traveled together to Singapore and then India, where they committed another murder, that of Israeli tourist Alan Aaron Jacobs, for apparently no other reason than to take his passport. They returned to Bangkok in spring 1976, unaware that Charles was by then a wanted man. However, after being interrogated by the police, he was released. But unfortunately, the Thai authorities didn't take any action. They thought that, if the news of the serial killings came to light, it would affect their tourism. Herman Nippenberg, a Dutch diplomat, found evidence against Charles, but he couldn't be arrested as he was in Malaysia with Leclerc and Chowdhury, stealing gems. It is believed that Chowdhury stole some gems in Malaysia and gave them to Charles. Though, Ajay was never seen after that, and nor was his body found. It is said that Leclerc and Charles killed him. The audacity of this latest sting was his undoing. Having tricked a 60-strong group of French postgraduate students into taking anti-dysentery medication, with the intention of robbing them all while they were unconscious, Charles miscalculated the doses. When some of the students were quickly and violently sick, the group realized their new friend had ulterior motives and overpowered him before calling the police. Charles was detailed at Tihar prison in New Delhi, but went straight on the charm offensive. He had smuggled some gemstones into the jail and used these to bribe prison officers and ensure he lived in relative comfort. He also turned his trial into a spectacle, going on hunger strike as well as hiring and firing his legal team at will. He was given 12 years' imprisonment for attempted robbery. Charles continued to live well in jail, having the luxury of his own television set and dining on fine food. His ability to gain the favor and confidence of others was undiminished. After 10 years inside, though, Charles faced a dilemma. While he was in jail, the murders he'd committed in Thailand had been thoroughly investigated, in particular by a Dutch diplomat, Herman Nippenberg, who had originally been charged with uncovering what had happened to those 2 Dutch students. Having raided Charles's home, Nippenberg had found a pile of passports and driving licenses, suggesting that Charles's victims numbered many more than those known. Realizing that he faced near certain conviction, and thus execution, in Thailand, Charles hatched a plan. With 2 years left on his sentence, he threw a party in his New Delhi jail for officers and inmates, at which he drugged all the partygoers with sleeping pills and simply walked out of prison. He then hid in clear sight, being apprehended in a restaurant in Goa shortly after. This escape saw his sentence extended by a further 10 years, exactly as he had intended. By the time of his release in 1997, the 20-year arrest warrant issued by the Thai authorities had expired. He now couldn't be charged for all those murders in Thailand. Upon release, Charles returned to Paris, where he enjoyed a certain strange celebrity. But this life appeared not exciting enough for him, and he chose to go back into the danger zone. In 2003, he traveled to Nepal where, on the streets of Kathmandu, he was recognized and arrested for the murders of the 2 North American backpackers in 1975. He was tried and received a life sentence. He is still incarcerated there today. Even if he turned out not to be the untouchable figure he thought he was, Charles Sobridge never once doubted himself or his motives. "I can justify the murders to myself," he once claimed, looking back over the mayhem and destruction he left in his wake. "I never killed good people." We've come to the end, thank you for watching. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. Till next time.